Let's talk about that. What is up with why does Kyle Shanahan today? He was asked why is Jordan Mason number 3 on the depth chart, and he kind of scoffed at the question as if it was ridiculous to assume that maybe there's something that Jordan Mason couldn't do, or if he's on his bad side in order to not play. And he just was like, oh well, he's just number 3. And when asked, okay, he's leading the running backs in the amount of yards per carry he gets, so why is he number 3 above Elijah Mitchell, who only has 2.5 yards per carry? Kyle Shanahan then referenced Elijah Mitchell's success with the team
in the past.
in the past, which to me is not necessarily what you should be making decisions on for your present day future team. Unfortunately, I feel like Kyle was a little bit defensive for the question, so we didn't get a great answer. Also, maybe Kyle, maybe it is like I've heard outside of that press conference it has something to do with Jordan Mason not knowing pass protection and stuff. Maybe he feels like it's kind
But
of
the thing
throwing
too, though,
him
is
under the bus to say that. So maybe that's why he didn't want to like be as
but he
honest.
said
I don't
that
know.
before. He said that stuff before. Like he said, like he
Yeah.
has this player has to do this to be like when Brandon Ayuk was struggling when he was in the doghouse, he publicly shamed them. But he needs to
Yeah.
he needs to block better. He needs to do this better if he wants to see the field for me. So it's like you've done it for other people. Why not do it for Jordan Mason? Why not explain why Jordan Mason isn't playing? I thought that was a
Yeah.
great question. I was like, a lot of people are like, why isn't Mason playing? He's right now he's been playing better than Mitchell. He's on the back burner. So
Yeah.
I'm confused.
And to me, it is a BS answer to reference the past because, in my opinion, you're a bad coach if you're making decisions on who you're playing based on how they played 2 years ago.
It kind of reminded me of Arthur Smith. When he was asked about why
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Now Bijan Robinson is a much better, much higher draft pick, so like it was a very valid question for them to be asking. And he was like, "Well, he's a decoy sometimes. It makes more sense." And then they're like, "Well, so you're gonna take 2.1 yards per carry from this running back over 5 yards per carry from this running back?" He's like, "That's not the point. That's not."
Oh, you muted.
It's kind of felt like how that's how I wanted to be. Um,
Yeah.
But I think Jordan Mason should be getting a lot more run with this team. Um, allow Christian McCaffrey to be a little bit free from having to take so much of the workload, and I think that's something that could potentially come back to bite us in the ass for a
Yeah,
team.
because we're talking about the different in their effort and energy, and yeah, maybe some of that is a mental shift, but also there's it's a point in the season where guys are, even if you're not on the injury list, not able to play, you're banged up, you're hurting, you're a little bit more slow, and you hope that your best players have energy for the most important games. It's like, hey Kyle, you don't need to run Christian McCaffrey into the ground in September. We need him in January, and this is going to be the most important time of the season. And I do wonder if Kyle's going to use that as a reason to give him way too many way too many touches. I was going to say, how do you feel about that touchdown record kind of that he was trying to break being over? I feel like maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they'll stop pressing to get him those things, and maybe that or those touches to get touchdowns, and maybe that'll start allowing, because they did see so much success. I cannot pronounce this name because I'm
Jermaine,
really bad. Jermaine.
Jermaine,
Jermaine said they found their identity, and I thought if this is true, I thought one of the best parts about their identity finding is that normally their identity has been, we talked about it, dominant defense. They did refine their domination within that defensive line, physicality on both sides of the ball, effort and energy. Those things are all good. But a different staple of this Kyle Shanahan scheme has been kind of like the run game taking over. And I thought the smartest thing that they did last game is that they actually passed the ball way more. And with this many offensive weapons, spreading the ball out to a diverse amount of players confuses the defense. It lets other players get open. It opens up Christian McCaffrey more when you're not constantly giving him the ball, because the instead of just keying in on him, people are actually looking out for other players. So then when he is getting the ball, he's even more successful. I think that was one of the top yards per carry games that he's averaged since the first 5-game winning streak, because Christian McCaffrey's yards per carry went down actually before the losing streak. He started, I think, after game number 3, he started averaging like 3 yards per carry for a couple games in a row there. And I think it's just because defenses knew that the whole entire game plan was just give the ball to Christian McCaffrey. So every single play, they're just keying in on him. When you start giving throwing the ball down the field to Ayuk a little bit, throwing it to George Kittle, you're getting other players to question where the ball's going, and maybe instead of ignoring the screens, they're actually going to fall for him a little bit more, and then Jordan, or not Jordan Mason, unfortunately, then Christian McCaffrey can be more successful. I also wonder if Kyle Shanahan's stubbornness will allow him to, because he kind of goes both ways with those questions. Sometimes when he's questioned, like he could go one way and Jordan Mason could see the field and he could go, see, I'm letting Jordan Mason
Mhm.
involved. Or he could like double down and be like, I'm really not going to play him now. So I'm interested to see how that works. Hopefully he gives Jordan Mason the ball before it's, you know, something that's out of necessity. Because he did say that in his question. He was like, well, he was our number 2 running back. And it was like, well, that was because Elijah Mitchell was
Yeah.
hurt. It wasn't
It's
like
like,
you
oh,
just,
oh, no shit, no shit. He was your number 2 running back when your number 2 was down. Oh, didn't
yeah.
realize the number 3 becomes the number 2. Oh, come on now. Like sometimes I feel like Kyle says stuff to the media on purpose. Like next thing you know, Jordan Mason's probably going to be heavily involved in this game plan. Like it's going to be
Yeah.
some random ass like he's going to get 6-7 carries and he's going to have a good game. It's just how Kyle works. But looking at, I would disagree. The Niners have not found their identity.
Okay,
Um,
tell me. Tell me why.
you don't have an identity off of one game. Um,
Okay. I
so
respect that.
when we look at the first couple of weeks of the season, right? We saw week 1 through 5. They had an identity. They were playing great defense. They were trying to run the ball down your throat. They were going off of play action with Brock Purdy, just regular dropbacks. They had something going for them. They had a great defensive unit. They had the identity that they had. Now, when we look at everything, there's 2 things that I'm looking at, right? Do you really need everything to be perfect around you to have this identity? Does the defense need to be absolutely perfect? Does the run game need to be absolutely perfect? Does everything need to be perfect for this team to succeed? I'm looking at
Right now,
everything,
the answer feels like yes.
right? So that means you don't have an identity. If you can't win multiple ways in the NFL, that's kind of worrisome, right? So 1 game back, they had 3 games in a row. We didn't know what the hell the offense was. Where the
Oh, you were heating up there too.
we didn't know what the offense was going on. Like we didn't know what the identity was for 3 weeks. 1 week back, and we can't. I can't say this is their identity. I can't because it's 1 week. I need to see it. Obviously,
You
I
want to
get
show some
we saw it for
consistency.
5 weeks to start the season. I thought like, oh, they have an identity. It's going to be a dominant defense, a great run game, using Brock Purdy to his strengths, the play action pass game, crossing routes, and doing things that make Brock Purdy successful. And then 3 weeks ago, you lose some of your best players. You would think that same identity would continue. And identity does not matter who is on the field. The defense is going to be great. The run game is going to be great. You're going to continue to run the ball at a very good level. Now, losing Trent, obviously, that has a lot to do with it. But the identity wasn't there, and then they kind of had to figure things out on the fly. So I don't know what their identity is yet. I know it's a tough SOB style of defense. Like they're going to punch you in the mouth. They're going to whip your ass all damn game defensively. That's what they're going to try to do. But what happens when that defense plays a good offense? What happens when the defense gets punched in the mouth? Can the offense back up what they've been doing all season long? Right. So that's where I'm looking at it. 1 game for me back from the bye week doesn't allow me to say they have their identity. Now I kind of have an idea what their identity is. We kind of have that idea. It's a great defense, run the damn ball, and put Brock Purdy in successful situations. But I can't say yet fully that that's 100% their identity because 3 weeks ago we were looking at the 49ers offense
Yeah,
like,
we're like,
whoa, can we run the ball? Can we not?
yeah.
Like, are we going to struggle this year to run the ball the rest of the way? So for me, that's where I'm
You
struggling
want them
to.
to prove it. Yeah, I feel that.
Absolutely, that's
Now,
where I'm struggling with.
do you think if they, it will you feel more comfortable if they win against Tampa, or do you think because Tampa is such a lesser competition. You're going to need them to prove it not only against Tampa by playing not a tight game against Tampa, but then also coming into that next. Because if you when I ask the question like, will the 49ers go on a run or something like that, we're more focused on maybe that 3-game Seattle Eagles Seattle stretch that's coming up, and then obviously the playoffs. But when we're talking regular season, I feel like maybe earlier in the season when the 49ers were on their win streak, everyone kept talking about when's their next test. And I feel like maybe for the second half of the season, while they're trying to reestablish their standard and who they are and who they're going to be going to the playoffs, because I'd bet all my money, and I'm not a bettor, that they will make it to the playoffs. But when I'm deciding, okay, are they going to be a team that's going to go to the NFC Championship, that's going to go to the Super Bowl potentially, or are they going to be first, second round playoffs out? I think that identity might be established during that 3-game, because that's when you're really going to see the team be challenged. That's why it's going to be a couple weeks away from the bye week, so they're going to be a little bit more tired, a little bit more fatigued, and you'll start to see some consistency with the second half of the season. Did they really make that mental shift? Are they able to turn it on and off like that? Also, if they are, that's kind of scary. Why did they get in the habit of doing that? But I mean, obviously that's what they need to do at this point. So I kind of feel like you're right, in my opinion. And the coaches and the players can't think like this because you can't think ahead. But as like a fan, I am interested in the game against Tampa, because I'm like, okay, are you going to play down to them, or are you going to keep that force and steamroll them? But then when I'm thinking, okay, like who are you going to be? I'm kind of
Mhm.
looking ahead at those 3 games coming up. And I'm not saying that I think they could drop one of those games and it wouldn't make me think that they're terrible. But to me, it's like, if you do like, if they are tight games, we kind of like need to like, okay, do you drop it because in the fourth
Mhm.
quarter Brock Purdy throws another interception? Because now this is like a crazy pattern that's scary. Or do you drop it because it's just back and forth, tough it out, and one guy makes a good play at the end, or but it's a hard fought battle, and everyone did the best that they could. That won't make me be like, see, they're not gonna be able to win, because I'm gonna be like, hey, they stuck it out. So I'll be interested in how they play. Are you going to get blown out when you play against the Eagles? Do they just steamroll you? Because now I'm like, okay, you guys are really fraudulent. What happens if the defense doesn't get a 3-and-out on the very first drive? What happens if you don't get a touchdown on the very first drive? The
How do
49ers
you
have
respond when you
proven,
get punched? That's the biggest thing. How do you
yeah,
respond?
yeah, because they're kind of like, so far they've showed that when they can be the bullies, they're dominant. But when they haven't responded when they got punched back yet. When they've
This year
met
at
a
least.
team that's not scared. Yeah, this year. Which is what's been shocking, because we've seen them in previous years kind of be like, the ones come being open to the fight and encouraging a fight. And now it's been kind of interesting because, like, talk wise, they seem to kind of be encouraging a fight, but then when you see them play, you're like, what's going on sometimes? And then you see them yesterday, or not yesterday, on Sunday, and you're like, where's that team every game? What's happening?
Mhm.
Why? It's very, it makes it draws you in, but it's definitely, when we talk about identity, it's definitely, I understand why you're hesitant to be like, I know who this team is, because they've
Yeah.
shown just such an emotional, or not even emotional, like a play roller coaster.
And I wouldn't
Um,
necessarily, because I know you did ask a little question in there, if I would look at their identity different if it's a close game with the Bucks. I actually won't. What I'll more so look at them as is maybe